The bullets had long since run out. His hands were bleeding. His rifle was so hot from firing that it had burned through his gloves. And still they kept coming, wave after wave, screaming across the frozen ground toward one man. One single man crouched behind a crumbling stone wall, reloading with shaking fingers, buying time for an army that had already left him behind. His name was Yogendra Singh Yadav. He was 19 years old, and on the night of July 4th, 1999, on a cliff face-high in the Himalayas, he did something that military historians still struggle to explain. He charged a machine gun nest, alone after being shot 4 times. The story of the Kargil War is one of the most dramatic and underreported conflicts of the 20th century. It didn't last years. It lasted months. But inside those months were moments of such extraordinary human courage that they belong alongside the greatest battles ever fought. To understand what Yogendra Singh Yadav did on Tiger Hill, you need to understand what India was facing in the spring of 1999. Because this wasn't just a skirmish on a border. This was a crisis that nearly became a nuclear war. It began with silence. In the winter of 1998 to 1999, Pakistani military forces, disguised as Kashmiri militants, began quietly crossing the line of control, the de facto border separating Indian and Pakistani-controlled Kashmir. They moved at night, they moved in small groups, and they moved high into the mountains, into positions that Indian forces had vacated during the brutal Himalayan winter, assuming no enemy would be insane enough to occupy them. They were wrong. By the time the snow melted and Indian patrols discovered what had happened, Pakistani forces had dug into over 130 posts across nearly 160 kilometers of terrain. Some of those positions sat at over 18,000 feet above sea level. The Indian army wasn't just going to fight an enemy. They were going to fight the mountain itself. The town of Kargil sits in the Ladakh region of Kashmir, cradled by some of the most punishing geography on Earth. Jagged ridgelines, near vertical cliff faces, temperatures that plummet to -20 at night, and above Kargil, commanding the national highway that served as India's lifeline to the remote Siachen Glacier region, sat a cluster of peaks that would become synonymous with sacrifice. Tiger Hill, 5,140. Tololing. These weren't just map coordinates. They were fortresses, and Pakistan had taken them all. India's response was Operation Vijay, launched in May 1999. The mission was straightforward in concept and catastrophic in execution. Retake the peaks. Do it fast. Do it before the international community forced a ceasefire. Do it before the situation escalated into something nuclear. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee were both aware that both nations had tested nuclear weapons just 12 months earlier in 1998. The world was watching. The clock was running. And somewhere near the top of a cliff, a 19-year-old boy from Uttar Pradesh was about to walk into history. Yogendra Singh Yadav had joined the Indian Army at the age of 16, lying about his age to enlist. He came from a military family. His father had served, his grandfather had served. Service wasn't a career to him. It was inheritance. By the time the Kargil conflict erupted, he was a Naib Subadar, a junior officer rank, attached to the 18 Grenadiers Regiment. And on July 4th, 1999, his unit was given one of the most dangerous assignments of the entire war. Take Tiger Hill. Tiger Hill, known as Point 5140 in military maps, was the crown jewel of Pakistani positions. It rose nearly a kilometer above the valley floor. The slopes were almost vertical in places, and at the top, Pakistani forces had set up interlocking bunkers with machine guns, sniper nests, and grenade stores. They had months to prepare. They had clear sight lines for hundreds of meters in every direction. Any force attempting to climb would be visible, exposed, and vulnerable for almost the entire ascent. The Indian commanders knew this. They planned accordingly. The assault would happen at night. A team of volunteers, all of them knowing the odds, would climb a near-vertical 1,000-foot rope section to reach the summit plateau before dawn. Yogendra Singh Yadav volunteered. So did roughly 30 of his comrades. They began their climb in the dead of night, in silence, their breath fogging in the frozen air, fingers raw against the rock. And then the Pakistanis opened fire. Someone had seen them, or heard them, or perhaps had simply assumed they were coming. The result was instantaneous and devastating. Machine gun fire raked the cliff face. Grenades began dropping from above, exploding against the rock, sending shrapnel tearing through the climbing party. Men fell. Men screamed. Men let go of the rope. Within minutes, the assault team was shattered. Most were dead or wounded. The officer leading the team was killed. The mission, by any conventional definition, was over. Yogendra Singh Yadav had been hit. Once in the groin, once in the arm, once in the shoulder. 3 bullets, any one of which should have ended a man's ability to fight. He kept climbing. He reached the top of the rope. He reached the plateau. He was alone. Every man behind him was either dead, dying, or unable to follow. He stood at the edge of the Pakistani position, bleeding from 3 wounds, and he attacked. He moved toward the first bunker and threw grenades. When the return fire came, he rushed it anyway, killing the occupants in close combat. He moved to the second bunker. He killed again. He was hit a 4th time in the leg during the assault on the 3rd and final bunker. He destroyed it. By the time the sun began to rise over the Himalayan ridgeline, Yogendra Singh Yadav had single-handedly neutralized the top of Tiger Hill, and his clear position allowed the rest of the 18 grenadiers to climb and consolidate. Tiger Hill fell to India that morning. Here is where the story takes a turn that almost no one knows. After the battle, Yogendra Singh Yadav was initially listed as killed in action. His family was informed. His village mourned. A death notice was prepared. He was alive. Barely, but alive. He was evacuated, treated, and survived his wounds. When military officials realized their error, there was a moment of extraordinary reckoning. This man, declared dead, had actually done all of those things they were reading in the combat reports. It wasn't exaggeration. It wasn't the fog of war inflating a story. Every detail was real. In 1999, Yogendra Singh Yadav was awarded the Param Veer Chakra, India's highest military honor, equivalent to the Victoria Cross or the Medal of Honor. He was the only living recipient of that award from the Kargil War. Everyone else who received it posthumously. But Yogendra Singh Yadav is only one thread in the tapestry of Kargil. Across the mountains, hundreds of similar acts were unfolding. Captain Vikram Batra, whose battle cry, "Ye dil manj more," "This heart wants more," became the defining phrase of the entire conflict, took point .4875 and died holding it. Lieutenant Manoj Kumar Pandey of the one of 11 Gorkha rifles cleared 4 Pakistani bunkers at Juba Ridge in Batalik sector before being shot in the head during his assault on the 5th. He died mid-charge, shouting encouragement to the men behind him. Both received the Param Veer Chakra, both posthumously. The Kargil War officially ended on July 26, 1999, a date India now commemorates annually as Kargil Vijay Diwas, Kargil Victory Day. In roughly 75 days of fighting, India lost 527 soldiers. Pakistan has never officially acknowledged its military's role, having maintained throughout the conflict that the fighters were independent militants. Estimates of Pakistani casualties range from 357 to over 700 killed. The international community, led largely by American diplomatic pressure on Pakistan, brokered a withdrawal. The line of control was restored roughly to its pre-war position. On a map, very little had changed, but something had shifted that cannot be measured on a map. India had proven, at catastrophic human cost, that it would not yield territory under fire. Pakistan had miscalculated, catastrophically, the international and military response. And high on a frozen cliff in the Himalayas, a teenager from a small Indian village had climbed into the kind of moment that defines the outer limits of what a human being can endure. Not because he had to, because he chose to, because the men behind him could not follow unless someone went first. Yogendra Singh Yadav today is in his 40s. He gives speeches. He appears at military commemorations. He is quiet about the night on Tiger Hill in a way that only people who have actually been there can be quiet about it. He does not describe it as heroism. He describes it as not having a choice. But that is perhaps the most honest thing anyone has ever said about courage. Because real courage is never the absence of fear. It is the decision, made in the darkest and most impossible moment, that the thing in front of you matters more than the fear inside you. 10,000 enemy troops held a mountain. One bleeding teenager took it back. And somewhere on that rock, for bullets deep in his body, he made a choice that his family had already been told he would never make again. The world declared him dead. He disagreed. Some people spend their entire lives waiting to find out what they're made of. On July 4th, 1999, Yogendra Singh Yadav found out. Halfway up a cliff in the dark alone.